Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Act with Confidence, Use Your Data to Prepare for the Future. My name is Chris Hobson, and I am the Custom Content Manager for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's webinar is sponsored by BrightBites. BrightBites is a platform that integrates existing data and analyzes it holistically, yielding insights that enable administrators and educators to confidently achieve their goals and vision, sparking untold impact for students. BrightBites looks at all the factors contributing to your students' well-being, academic, social, and emotional, and connects the dots, revealing a rich picture of what's happening with each student and why. Before I introduce our presenters, I'd like to take a minute to go over some features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on the Q&A box. There will be time at the end of the presentation for our panelists to address questions. Also, there's a group chat function that you can launch by clicking on chat. Feel free to use this feature to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question, but please don't use this feature to ask questions of our speaker. If you have a question for the speaker, you can use the Q&A box that I just mentioned. There will also be informative resources posted in the chat that you can download at your discretion. With these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with our presentation. The presenters today are Chris Graves, Senior Manager, Decision Analytics and Information Manager at Shelby County Schools, and Dr. Crystal Ayers, Chief Business Development Officer at BrightBites. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to our presenters to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon and or good morning to everyone, depending on what part of the country you're in. Appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day during their lunch hour to join us. Again, today we're going to be talking a little bit about preparing our data for the future and what that means in the current environment. So, co-presenting with me is
hi, I'm Crystal Ayers.
Who's the Chief Development Officer.
Oh, sorry, there's a bit of a delay, I think, on our little webinar here, but thanks so much, Chris. Yep, I'm Crystal Ayers, Chief Business Development Officer with BrightBites. I've been in education for about 30 years. I've had the privilege of teaching at the elementary, middle, and high school, as well as college levels, and also at serving at various executive level positions in districts within 2 different states, Florida and Georgia. I am super passionate about student learning outcomes and really making sure that data is accessible and readily usable for educators to make decisions for students. So welcome today. We look forward to sharing with you.
And as I mentioned, my name is Chris Graves. I'm the Senior Manager at the Analytics Information Management team in Shelby County Schools. I have a background around analytics as well as process improvement and enterprise level implementations on the technology side. And then also currently for the past 4 years, I've been working with Shelby County Schools in addition to that, doing school training supports. And as of last week, completing my Broad residency virtually for the school year. So we're going to talk a little bit today about kind of the journey we've been on the past, really, I'd say 3+ years, talking about where we are, kind of what we've gone through and how we got there. And then also, obviously in today's world, talking a little more about what the future might hold in our work as we move forward in this new environment. So where are we today? I would hazard a guess that if 6 months ago, any of us had said spring break would be the end of our school year for a large majority of us around the country, kids wouldn't be back, classrooms would be closed, and we'd all be working from home. I don't know if a lot of us would have had an immediate answer to what that might look like and the challenges that's going to present. This is, I think you hear scenarios where people are talking about overuse of the word unprecedented, but I struggle to think of a better description of what we're going through in all our districts, where our parents have become the teachers, where our teachers are doing everything they can to get up to speed remotely. Our school leaders are doing what they can to stay engaged with the community while also staying safe. For many of us in larger districts, it's not just about learning and continuing to teach our kids. It's also about continuing to feed them and ensure they have access to medical care and all the other things that go on for our kids that are most in need. That definitely changed the landscape of the conversation we're going to have today. I think as we think about where we're at, when people were looking at assessment results and attendance data and discipline data and all those things, of now the question becomes, well, what happens when all that disappears? How do we continue to help our kids and grow them? And that's really the world we're in. I think many of us are now, as we're looking ahead, to say, okay, do what we can through the end of the school year, but starting to think about, what does next year look like, right? What are the questions I'm going to need to answer? What does the start of school look like? What is my school calendar going to look like? Or what school calendar will be the best for this scenario? And we just want to really put that out there of, this is what we're dealing with, right? This is not something I think any one of us were necessarily prepared to tackle as little as 4 or 5 months ago. And as we've gotten up to speed on this and started to address these issues in the education community, for us in the data world or analytics world, reporting world, whatever you want to call it, how can we support that, right? To ensure our kids are continuing to have the access they need and our teachers are supported in a meaningful way. So that's really where you start to say, what does the year look like for us, right? How are we going to do student learning, right? How are we going to monitor its success? How are we going to ensure kids that need individualized support are getting it? Do they have the resources, right? How do we know if these new virtual initiatives are working, and are they successful? And there's not an easy answer to any of these questions, I think, as everyone on this call likely knows. But it is something that I think we're all grappling with. And it's, a community out there of, are we in a position to begin to answer these questions? So before I jump into the Shelby County journey, I wanted to let Crystal give a quick overview and taste of what's going to be available and kind of some of the resources available to you now from Bright Bites, the company.
Thanks, Chris. We really believe in leveraging your data to the greatest extent. And so what you're seeing here are some icons of areas that we are going to be directly working with Shelby County with their data and other of our Bright Bites customers to ensure that people have line of sight and visibility into the data on day one. So you can see on some of these, what does my student academic progress look like? We know that some folks have stopped with grades in March, or they've done some creative grading between March and the end of May, depending on their circumstances. And so we'll be able to provide Shelby County, as well as other of our districts that have our platform, the predictive analytics platform section, with visibility into what do students look like in the past, present, and future. So we can proactively address those areas of concerns, and student intervention, connect those students from day one to really ensure that those students are leveraging the supports and services that are available to them at their particular school. We're also able to help with technology, knowing to what extent technology is having an impact on that instruction, and to what extent are your educational applications being utilized either at school or from remote home learning. So having that visibility as well. As we move to our next slide, you'll see that whether or not you're a Bright Bites customer or not, you can quickly get a pulse on where your district is. We have collaborated with ISTE to create a free survey so that you can, it was designed really so that you could understand how students, how educators, and even parents are handling this transition to remote learning. So if you're interested in that, we absolutely have that available, and you just log into our website and you can address that. And then here's some details as far as what does it actually address. Do parents have access to technology, internet resources? What additional support do teachers need to feel successful, you know, and maybe how are students adapting to this transition? So those are some important items. Again, it's free. You can visit brightbytes.net to learn more, or you can reach out to us at the end of this and we'd be happy to make additional connections for you. But want to be able to really help utilize the resources that Bright Bites has across the nation to address this, as Chris just said, unprecedented time. So Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Crystal. So with that, let's start talking about where have we been in Shelby County Schools. So located in Memphis, Tennessee, in the greater regional area. We are 901. You know, the school district here is much more than just the school district, the largest in the area and the largest in the state of Tennessee, but it is also, you know, part of the community. And we very much own that as a district in engaging with the communities around the city and ensuring it's not just about educating, but also growing and being a healthy community partner over time. Kind of big time overview of what we look like: over 100,000 students, over 200 schools. As you can see, they're very active in the volunteer space. We are currently working towards, in the district, what we refer to as Destination 2025 as our strategic plan. That is where you see that 80, 90, 100 goal come into play, where our target is 80% of seniors being college and career ready, 90% of students graduate on time, and then 100% of those that do graduate college and career ready enroll in those post-secondary opportunities. We are a large urban school district, and along with that comes all the trappings and challenges that we have in our community. You know, systemic levels of poverty, a lot of inequities across the region that we're working to address to ensure kids are meeting that goal. This initiative started about 6 years ago, so we're a little more than halfway there. And a lot of the data work that we're going to be talking about today is in support of that, to allow our district leaders to move forward with that work and monitor progress over time. So what did our journey look like? I will tell you, when we talk about our journey today, for all of you out there that have done projects like this before, it will sound very, very exciting. It will, I think it will be interesting, but also know it is impossible to do more than scratch the surface of what's gone on over the last 3 years. But my intent is to hopefully give you a look and feel of just roughly where we've been and where we started and some of the key decisions along the way to get us to where we are today. So this is what my stakeholders yelled at me. I say that with just the greatest sense of happiness of standing in a large auditorium with a Sharpie and Post-it notes and saying, what do you need? As a district in 2017, we were coming into a scenario where we were going to have some technical issues on the backside of our data infrastructure and some of our key applications changing. And so we really wanted to say, well, what do our schools actually need out of this? And this is what they gave me. This was an entire wall in my office for the better part of 18 months as that kind of guiding directional force of here's what their expectation is of our work. And if we're not delivering something that's of use back to our schools, then there's really very limited point in doing what we're doing. And so you can see there's a lot of frantic scribbles and Post-it notes and additional emails that followed after the meetings of people saying, here's what all we need, taped to the wall. But that's really what helped frame our idea of what were we going to try to tackle in the coming school year. So at a high level for our school leaders, it was really just about cross-functional information, right? I don't know how your organizations function, but I think I've grown to believe a lot of us are very similar in the idea of we have a lot of applications floating around, not necessarily pure alignment across the entire district or charter network. We have people asking for decisions that are coming from ultimately 10, 15, even 20 different data sources. So a big part of this for our school leaders was to be able to say, I just need all this information together so I can work with my kids and move on with life, right? Ensure that the compliance reports actually align so that we're not getting multiple reports that are supposedly giving us the same answer, but it's a different number, right? And getting lost in that conversation about, you know, well, what's the real answer? Instead, focusing conversation on what's right for the kids, what decision needs to be made. And then there was also the additional layer for us at the central office of district leadership level was ensuring that as we start to say, are our investment decisions working, are our programs working, that it's relying upon all of that same data. And that was something that was extremely difficult for us to get to at that point in time, and kind of a guiding force of what we were building to for our end users. On the technical side, I think for all of us, like none of us want to be the district in the paper with the ransomware attack where we've lost all our data, or our student data has been breached. So data security for all of this is front of mind. And this is something where you're saying, I'm trying to give access to our data and to informational data points to more people while maintaining security. So that was certainly a key focus for us to make sure we were doing that in a safe and an appropriate manner along the way. And the other piece was the governance side of ensuring if I tell you, here's your suspension rate, everyone has the same definition of a suspension rate. Something, you know, that on the surface is basic, but without the common definitions, people can spend a lot of times talking in circles, and we wanted to address that. Source system sides. As I mentioned before, I think by the time it was said and done for us, I kind of stopped counting once I got beyond 40 different applications. So a lot going on there. We also had major source systems changing. Our student information system was changing. Our state testing had changed. And we're also in the process of implementing a new ERP system. So a bulk of our data, the systems they were coming from, were changing. We had to address that. And then ongoing basis, just those different assessment systems, those different student interaction systems that schools might pick up or zones of schools might pick up, and being able to stay on top of those of what's going on, what's available, what do they need to know, and what do we need to correlate it to in other areas of the district. On the architecture side, this was, you know, I think the first point is really, you know, the kind of holy grail for all of us, right? It's a truly creating a single source of truth. You know, ensuring that, especially for your school leaders, that they're not getting emailed from 4 different people with different reports that those people put together, who knows how, with different answers to the same question. You know, the level of frustration for our principals and APs, and that was just something we really wanted to address for them, to try to make sure they weren't getting inundated with information that was not allowing them to do their job better and save them time. The other piece for us as a district was really trying to slowly move away from manual spreadsheets, automating where we can, encouraging some process improvement pieces to ensure that they're able to do these things, and that the data that's captured in spreadsheets, no matter where it is, immediately becomes available back to the people that need it. So to do all that, where are we? As I mentioned, I'm very much a process improvement, project management type person. So really when we looked at this in the lens of what were the decisions to be made around the people, the technology, and the processes involved, one of the key things we did on the people side is we did a little bit of a restructuring, and ultimately added 5 net new positions to build out my current team around analytics and information management to ensure this was a sustainable solution, but also ensure that we were giving the support to our schools and central office leadership that was needed. We continually work with our continuous improvement team. In our district, we call them stat cycles, but really ensuring that the group that's running that understands and is able to give feedback on the data we're presenting based on what they're learning in those sessions. And then also developing champions in other departments. You know, we're a district, we have over 8,000 end users for the products we're talking about today. Some of you are probably in districts or states that have tens of thousands of users. You can't do that with a handful of people, right? So where we could, developing those champions in other areas that could speak for us when we're not there, that could help drive that continual change and improvement. On the technology side, we address that through both our partnership that we're talking about today within Bright Bytes and with a iPaaS solution to provide us with an end user data store. And then also we're tiering our analytics for custom and one-off reporting that's doing some things from external data sources through Power BI, since we are an Office 365 district. Then on the process side, setting some things in motion to ensure our stakeholders understood what we were doing, but also we continue to maintain that voice back from them to ensure we were maintaining the right direction with our work and meeting them where they needed to meet. What did that look like? That was continuous school training sessions, extensive communication planning, training planning, as well as now we've started as a district every week at our cabinet level even. They pull up content, discuss it as a group, and make decisions off of that. So it's really from in every layer of our organization, ensuring that people understand not just that the data is available, but how to use it in a meaningful way, and what that looks like. And that, you know, that process side probably is the largest area of investment that we made, especially in the training and governance council and communication planning to help us get to where we are today. So what did we learn from all of this? There's no such thing as over communication. You know, it's something that every step of the way, starting from when we realized we were going to have to try to tackle this, before we ever had an RFP out, before we did vendor selection and moved forward with Bright Bytes, we were communicating daily, weekly with schools, doing constant stakeholder engagement sessions. And then since that time, in the next 2 years, it's been continuous training cycles, trying to keep everything front of mind with our customers to ensure they understand where we're at. And a lot of that really was, we were able to capitalize on some early wins, right? Letting them know we're not going to have everything you need 3 months from now, but we are going to have things that are going to be meaningful for your work, and we're going to continue to work with you to bring those. And we were able to really do some exciting stuff on a very short timeline, where they weren't waiting years for a large data management project. They were truly able to see results and start to get their hands on things within 3 months of us signing the contract. And that was a big deal, especially for our school users. And for us, it's always also just, you got to be flexible about this. You know, we set out a long-term vision, and we've probably made thousands of incremental changes along the way based on what the day gave us. You know, understanding directionally where we want to go, but being flexible in the day-to-day and week-to-week to understand we're not giving up on that long-term goal, but we just need to really assess where we're at today and what can be done and what can be accomplished. And that's really helped us so that we're not getting locked into this. Well, this is the only thing we said we were going to do. We have to do it. So that's a big help point for us. Something else, and this was, I think, more internally for our own team, not necessarily for the whole district, but any project of this scale, there's always going to be people that are disappointed, right? Everyone has this vision of what they're going to get in their head, and everybody's vision is a little different. And so be comfortable with that, but also continuing to engage those people and understanding what would get them to where they need to be, and keeping them as a supporter is a big part of what we did. And then probably the single biggest thing we started with 3 years ago is schools first. I know that's something that's easy to say, but in the realities of the world and in large organizations, like maintaining that focus and not getting sidetracked from your deliverables that you want to give to schools by projects potentially coming from senior officials with elsewhere in the district. That was a really big deal for us. The timeline we were on was very aggressive and very fast. And, you know, so we had to be really upfront and had to have some of those reminder conversations throughout of, we really want to do this work with you, but we're going to take care of our schools first, right? We're going to get our principals what they need. We're going to work with our counselors and teachers and get them what they need and train them first. We're not saying we can't do that. We're just saying not right now. And that was, I think, a big help to our short-term success, but also building those relationships for what we've accomplished over these last 2 years since we've gone live. So some current state things of what we've got going on now. This spring, we've been testing what we're referring to as Bright Bites 4.0. And really what we're getting into in this space now is driving the analytics down to classroom and like section level so that teachers can look at their individual class periods. So for your high school and middle school teachers that have students rotating, it's not just all of their students, it is the students for third period math or fifth period English, whatever the case may be, and being able to look at those students across all of their points of data and information to understand where they're at and what's going on. In our districts, things like this really resonate with us simply because we have, give or take, a 30% mobility rate in our district. So we have a lot of kids that are constantly moving to multiple schools in a year. So for our teachers, getting to know these students as quickly as they can, this is really important for us. It's something that we're pushing very hard on. And we're hoping this will be something as we come back in the fall, we start to push this out to the rest of our schools. So I mentioned those 8,000 users. What did we do in year 2 with them? In this shortened year 2, we did over 160 voluntary trainings. And this is something where year 1, we were out there bugging principals, bugging our zone directors, bugging our counselors, whoever we could, of saying, hey, let us come to your school and train you. Let us come to your school and train you. Let us help you do this. And what we saw in year 2 is we didn't have to ask anyone. Prior to that March delay for us in Shelby County and Tennessee, things shut down about March 17th for us and went remote. We did 162 in-person trainings around our district. We're seeing login rates above 50% a month. And then the 2 big ones for us that are a little more difficult to measure, but quantitatively or qualitatively are just probably 2 of the most important things we can see, is getting to something that's sustainable long-term. I kind of like to always call it, the hit by the bus scenario, right? If you are deploying something, or in my case, right, if myself or one of the key members on my team, if we'd walked out and got hit by a bus, would the work have stopped? Early on the project, absolutely, right? And I feel like I'm really happy in this year 2 where I'm feeling much better about we can sustain this work. We can continue to grow this work. And so this is something for us that we're really excited about. And to help with that, data literacy district-wide. And this is something you have to listen for it, right? You hear it in conversations. You hear the way people are asking questions changes, right? This is what you have to listen for and be in front of your stakeholders about. This is probably, of everything else, like the thing I'm most excited about is I feel like we're boiling data down to a straightforward enough and simple enough view that they can now have informed conversations about what's the decision to be made, right? What do we need to connect this student with? And then just some of the broader usage things where we're leveraging the predictive modeling for our RTIA, which is the response intervention for academics, for our high school identification process, right? So that anytime a high school counselor can go out and know which student in their building might need RTI intervention support. We're also using this within our RTIB. So this is the response to behavioral piece. And this is something where, in addition to identification of students, we're also using this to help track and log our interventions and supports that are being provided to students that meet certain criteria. And so all of that is just encouraging more and more hands on the platform, driving more conversation, driving more questions. And this is something that we kind of slowly started to happen, and it was an intentional focus, but then in this past year where we had the opportunity to really see it start to take off, has just been, it's been a lot of fun to watch. I don't know another way to say it. It's just been fun to watch and be a part of. So where are we going? What does next year look like? If anyone on this call can tell me what next year is going to look like, I would love to hear that answer. I think that's very much a black box for a lot of us right now. And so really for us, it's kind of thinking about, in this world of COVID-19, what support are our students going to need? How do we deliver that? How do we get the right information to our teachers? And what does that look like? What information is going to be available? We're also very interested in really tightening the link between RTIA and RTIB. So despite this traditionally being delivered by two different individuals, whether it be academic or behavior related, we really want to use our data to be thoughtful about the idea that very often it's a single child in front of you, right? You're looking at a child that might be in both scenarios. So having that full picture of the student and understanding what those impacts might be. We're really looking forward to getting back into our teacher training, especially with the new version of the platform coming out and getting their feedback on that. We're now, in the world of virtual, right? So what does virtual training look like? We've been a very hands-on group with our schools. And if we can't do that the way we have previously, how do we do that so that it's still helpful for them and supports their efforts? And also data literacy is a never-ending journey, right? So continuing to say, how do we improve that, right? How do we push out to more users and get further up that curve as a district to ensure that the data is being used appropriately and that they're able to answer the questions that they have. I think that's something that's always front of mind for us. If they can't answer their questions, then we're doing something wrong on our side. And how can we deliver that information to them to ensure they have what they need? So, like I said, that was the sprint of a 3-year overview in about 15 to 20 minutes. I do want to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So with that, I will turn it over. I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Crystal to give a brief overview of BrightBites 4.0 and a demo of what's coming.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate all of that background and context. It's super helpful so people can understand your journey. I know that you're more than happy to also connect with them at the end and offline. So we're here to really provide today with as much support that we can give during this time that's just unique for a pause across the United States here. But really, when we talk about BrightBites data analytics platform, Chris is referencing it as 4.0, and that's because we've had several editions of BrightBites throughout the years, and this is our 4th ramp. And so we've renamed ourselves the BrightBites analytics platform, so that might be kind of user-friendly and catchy for you to understand. And we really are focusing on ensuring that there's equity and access for all students. And we do that by providing really the most comprehensive data analytics platform available. And we take this very seriously. We go the extra mile to provide a custom safety net for every child. Currently, we serve about 11 million students in 2,700 districts across 47 states. And I'll talk to you just a little bit more about why that custom approach is so important. So first of all, BrightBites is informed by the leading research organizations such as American Institute for Research, the University of Pennsylvania, and ISTE. They collaborated with us to create the frameworks of what I'll show with you today, as well as our own internal BrightBites research team. And so we are a research-based organization, and we are created by educators for educators. So we have a passion, and our mission and vision aligns with that. You can see that we've also won numerous awards for our design as well as our analytics. I said that we do a customized safety protection of a net for students, and really this is a personalized approach to address student need, because we do recognize that every school, every district is unique. And so the thresholds for things like attendance and behaviors for different parts of assessments and academics are all different based on what district that you're attending, what school that you're attending. And so we really take a personalized approach to look at data within a district across multiple years, 10 years, 15, 17 years, however many years you can give us access to. But I'll also answer the question, and yes, we can do it with just 1 year of data as well. But we're able to provide you with thresholds across multiple areas using our algorithms to really identify students showing signs of risk across your campuses, for two different outcomes. One is progress towards graduation, so that's grade level growth to graduation, as well as post-secondary readiness. And then lastly, it's that earlier and more accurate identification. So we're able to identify students as early as first grade that might be struggling. So we can connect them to our tool called intervention management that really allows educators to have visibility into what happens when somebody is referred for services, whether they're using the MTSS process or RTI, and that's a customized process that we work hand in hand with every district to complete those tools in order to get drop down items that are specific here for your district. So when we talk about BrightBites Analytics platform, this top area is what we're referring to as the core platform. So this is all inclusive. You would receive information about early warning and whole child, meaning social emotional learning, climate, culture, kind of getting that 360-degree view of a student, not just the quantitative, but also qualitative aspects. And all the other areas here that you see around attendance and assessment. As Chris mentioned, we pull all of this data into one platform. And you can imagine that this data lives in disparate systems right now, which is very difficult to get to. Some of it lives in a student information system. Some of it might live in a data warehouse. Some of it lives in spreadsheets. Some of it lives, in an assessment platform. So what we do is provide a one-stop shop. We pull all of the information. We work with your district to obtain that, pull it all together for you. It takes about 10 to 12 weeks for us to pull all that data and then visualize it to your own instance, your own dashboards, so that your thresholds that are appropriate for your district are then populated to show past data, your current data, and then predictive data for future. If you're also interested in additional solutions, we have, the ability to pull in HR data or finance or transportation. Maybe you're interested in, to what extent is teacher retention being impacted by student behaviors. There's lots of things to look at, lots of questions to ask of data. We have a plethora of data. We want to be able to answer the questions that are most pressing to you. So we work with you on obtaining that information. So for integration purposes, a lot of people want to know, well, can you integrate with our system like Infinite Campus or PowerSchool or this and that, and I can say that we've literally integrated with hundreds of education systems across the nation. We provide accurate and validated predictions that again are based on your district's data. Kind of already talked to you about that, but that using that safety net of identifying students in your district based on your district's data, not a district down the street, actually increases your accuracies into the 90th percentile for identification of students. So that it can be, we don't over-identify or under-identify. We don't have false positives, false negatives. And then we're research-based. We always provide recommendations. We don't just start with populating data, but what are those actionable next steps that you can do? And then when you partner up with BrightBites, just like Chris's team in Shelby County, he's assigned a client thought partner. And that person works directly with the district leaders, and they conduct things like what you're seeing here, data coaching around using data to really understand, data leadership coaching to really understand what are the trends and patterns within your district, what are some areas that you want to identify, and then we help you drive to those end goals and meet those initiatives that you're trying to roll out for your educators, whether they're at the different schools or across your entire district. So I'm going to pop into our platform right now and just kind of at a high level go through some information, and then when I'm done in about 6 or 7 minutes, we'll go to questions and answers. And at that time, if you have additional questions of any of the screens that you're seeing today, we are more than happy to pop back into this demo or to provide a follow-up afterwards. So when I said this is the core, you're able to see at a glance the areas of academics all the way through post-secondary, right? So we're pulling these 6 domains of information across all the different systems that you might have, pulling it all together, cleaning it, and then visualizing it in a very user-friendly manner so that at a district level, you're able to see, at a glance, what percentage of students in rank order by school are at risk for maybe not graduating high school, or maybe not making the next grade level progression, or not being prepared for post-secondary, depending on the lens that you want to look at that. You can dive into any one of these areas at any time to, obviously just obtain the data for that particular data point. So if I was an attendance officer in Apple Blossom District, I might be interested in what are our absences year to date or tardies or any patterns of that. I might also be interested in looking at all of my schools across the district and seeing which school has the highest absenteeism. So I might want to dig deeper into a particular school, like Amuka High School here, where now I'm able to see those 4 data points, but specific to this school. So we have a tiered approach. We look at the district is able to look at the aggregate of all the schools as well as individual schools. Each school then is able to look at their school data and then their teachers by period, like Chris mentioned, and then all the way down to a student. And then teachers have obviously the aggregate of their schools, but then they are able to see the personal identifiable information about each student that's on their roster, and all the way down to a student profile page. So let's say I'm at Amuka High School and I would like to log in and see Ms. Steele's class because I, as a principal, I'm going to go do a walkthrough, or I'm an instructional coach and I'm going to go assist Ms. Steele today. And I want to know where her class is struggling. Or I am Ms. Steele and I want to gain more information about my students. So lots of ways to look at it. But basically now this renders for that particular period 1 geometry class. I might be interested in assessments for this class. So my geometry students, how are they performing across these other assessments? And then down to benchmarks. Wow, I probably need to reteach this particular standard. Or maybe I need to kind of maybe come over here to this standard and take a look at creating some intervention groups for that particular one for reteaching. Maybe I want to, these might not be the questions that I'm interested in. So I want to go a little bit deeper, and I might be more interested in trends and patterns, right? I might want to say, what do my students look like compared to other students in the district or compared to other schools that are taking geometry? How are they faring in grade level growth? So this would be my geometry students compared to other people taking geometry at my school compared to my district. So that might be one thing of interest. You might be interested in state performance exams. You might be interested in using some predictive analytics to understand to what extent are your benchmarks preparing students for success on the state exams. Maybe these aren't the questions that you're interested in. And we really try and provide a user-friendly way by posing the question and then telling you what it aligns to. You can save each of these charts. So maybe if I was interested in a different question, maybe I'm interested in achievement gaps in my classroom and I want to dig into that, or maybe I'm interested in assessments related to attendance, those 2 endpoints. Basically, any 2 things that you're interested in, how they intersect, if you have the data, we can create a chart for you to understand and dig deeper. We do that during onboarding. It's not an extra cost or anything. But all of this information then is you're able to save each chart and graph to your own dashboard so that you don't have to peruse a whole bunch of charts and graphs to get to what's important to you. You can save each one in folders. Maybe I want to have, if I'm Ms. Steele, I want to have attendance folders, or I want to just have all information for all of my classes in one place. It's up to each individual person can save their own information, make notes, set alerts, create cohorts, all kinds of things like that they can do. And then finally, if I'm interested in looking at a roster view, so these are all the students taking my geometry class, and I really want to see how they're doing on their benchmark exams by proficiency, I'm able to look at a glance at that color coding and mapping, and I can sort by that. And finally, maybe I'm interested in, I'm having a student conference with Jennifer, or I'm having a student success team meeting about Jennifer with her parents or with other folks at my school, and I'm interested in what her current grades are. So a one-stop shop, really, so you can have conversations around student performance for current time or looking back in time over the past 5 years. Maybe I'm interested in really digging into her assessment because I'm going to provide some intervention, one-on-one instruction for her, and being able to quickly jump to that and not have to go locate her benchmark assessment someplace else. Looking at her attendance rates, her behaviors, and then everything I've showed you to this point is showing you information that's either occurred, so it's historical, or it's present information. But if we want to get proactive and not be reactive, then we want to look at the predictive analytics dashboards. And so as we look at that, we're able to, this is where we apply an algorithm looking at your district's data, pulling as much information, as many years as possible from all of your multiple SISs that you've probably had throughout the years, or your data warehouse or different spreadsheets, whatever you can give to us across the areas of performance, attendance, and behavior. And we're able to then create thresholds custom for your district so that we can populate these levels of risk at a glance, so that when a teacher or an educator logs in, they can quickly assess for progress towards graduation or post-secondary readiness, the areas that need attention. And so we use this approach of, low risk green, moderate risk yellow, or high risk red to draw people's attention to the areas of focus. At a glance, you can see that the student is struggling with being tardy as well as chronically absent. Probably not unique to this district or any district. We've all got those students, and that's impacting that student's performance. So at first glance, I might think I need to probably provide this student with an attendance intervention. But if I look at the whole child, this is our qualitative information where it's a survey where students, parents, teachers, all educators and non-educators in a district can participate and provide us information around their social emotional learning, their climate, and their culture. We're able to see that Jennifer doesn't feel like she's participating in school, and she's got low social emotional connections. And so maybe if we would come and have a conversation with her about how she's feeling around these areas that are showing red and yellow here, and we can address that root cause, we can really get down and pinpoint it, then she'll come to school, right? And then as she attends school and her attendance increases, obviously that will increase her performance. So lots of ways to look at that information. And then you can look at, additional raw information or her interventions and things that she has received over time, so that as she goes from elementary to middle to high, the interventions that she's participated in transfers with her. So we don't have to use those old-fashioned folders and pieces of paper that can get lost, but really we can use the dynamic information here. So I will pause now and thank you for allowing me to share our Bright Bites analytic platform with you. And I want to save time here. We've got about 10 minutes left to open up for questions. So I'm going to turn it back to our sponsor today, Chris Hobson with eSchool Media, to moderate for us.
Thank you, Crystal. It looks like we have a few general questions. It was awesome that our presenters today have looked at a lot of these questions and answered them in detail, but we're going to get to some general ones here. First is, how long does data integration take?
So we have actually integrated in as few as 6 weeks with a very large district, about 8 weeks, I think it was, with Shelby County. Most of our districts take about 10 to 12 weeks, and that's because tech folks at the district level usually have other priorities that are pressing. So we can do it in less time, but the traditional time is about 10 to 12 weeks.
Okay, and what support do I receive during implementation is a question.
Yeah, lots of support. We have, wow, it takes a village to really gather all this information and populate it, right? So you have access to a personal technology data scientist at Bright Bites that will work directly with the technology team at your district in order to understand what information we need to obtain and how to get that information over to us in a safe way. And we help you map that. And then simultaneously, you have a client success person that we call a client thought partner. This person is certified by Harvard's data leadership certification. This person is going to work with your district leaders on the rollout and implementation, sharing best practices, as well as guiding you through the process of embedding, what other questions that would be important for you to ask of the data based on what's most pressing to you to know. And so we take a handheld approach, then we come on site and we provide professional development on site, as well as provide webinars virtually. And then we have a help center that has a plethora of information through video as well as written materials.
Good information. Where is the data being fed into Bright Bites from? Data warehouse, spreadsheets?
Yep. So It's coming from the student information system. It's coming from, if you've got a data warehouse also, it's coming from flat files, from assessment vendors that if you have iReady or Achieve 3000, we can work directly with them, or STAR. So lots of different information there. I don't know, Chris, if you have anything else. I know you had a tremendous amount of data that we pulled in from disparate systems.
Yeah, for us in Shelby County, it really came down to what the vendors were capable of delivering. So, with our PowerSchool integration, it was a direct RESTful API call, versus with iReady. They had a really nice integration suite to use. But then some of our smaller assessment vendors, ultimately it was just a delivery of a flat file through an SFTP. So it's kind of whatever they're capable of. I think for us, we were not in a position or a place yet as a district to start to try to push that conversation for all vendors of here's your required way of delivering data yet. So we're kind of accepting it however we can get it, and including like our state testing where we might actually be web scraping those results off the state testing website. I hope no one from the state's on there to hear that though.
Another question is, are you using parent-student surveys as part of your data collection?
So yes, the last screen that I was showing you about Whole Child, that brings in social emotional learning as well as climate and culture. We survey parents as well with that data to pull that in. We also have a technology and learning survey. So if you want to understand to what extent technology is impacting classroom instruction and what levels of access to students and teachers have, what skill level do teachers and students have, that is also a survey-based tool that parents can also respond to.
Is there any way to track different tiers of intervention?
Yes, we have, as part of our drop-down fields, we have the ability to tag, you have the ability to tag an intervention to a tier. So you can then sort and filter by tier 1 and see all those students that have received a tier 1 intervention. So it's in a filtering component within our intervention module.
Great.
And I'll pop that up just as we're talking, I can keep answering questions, but I'll kind of show you what the intervention looks like without talking through it, just so you get a feel for it.
Is there a list of services you currently integrate with that don't require CSV upload? Or do you have a list of services that require CSV upload?
We don't have set requirements. We have CSV file uploads that if you can't, we can do API, we can do or CSV file uploads. It's really whatever you have available. And maybe Chris already answered that question. Whoever asked that, if it didn't get answered, if you want to just retype into the Q&A, maybe specific what you're referencing, I'm happy to address that further.
That sounds great. And like I said earlier, all the questions that were asked by attendees, there will be some follow-up. And if we didn't get to your questions, somebody from Bright Bites or an expert will get back to you. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'd like to thank our presenters today for a very informative presentation. And I'd like to thank the audience members as well for joining us. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to the recording, along with the slides. Thanks again for participating, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.